Today we're making a video about the LG C4 and G4 OLEDs and how to calibrate them to get vivid mode to look like filmmaker mode and to get game optimizer to look its best that it can. And the overall philosophy of how like the thinking process that I'm using when I'm calibrating for my games. That means adjusting for midtones, shadow detail and darkness and overall light perception from the image. So we have a very nice looking image here from Black Myth Wukong. And this game is amazing. It's game of the year for me, in my opinion. Everybody has their own opinion and it's totally fine if you don't agree with me on this. But this game is breathtaking and it looks insanely good. In this game, however, we have black level rays and the midtones are very lifted. So how do we dial this in? First of all, in this game in particular, you will want brightness on 0. This will fix the gamma in the game and there won't be as much black level rays. After this point on, we are going to be calibrating on standard. You can use any preset that you want. It doesn't matter at all. There is no difference in between the modes. The only difference is the sports mode will punch up the vibrancy or the saturation with the colors on green. So if you don't like that, don't use sports mode. So we're using it flat. We're not adjusting anything for now. I'm just gonna check. We're using dynamic tone mapping so that we don't lose any nits whilst in the PlayStation menu. I'm just gonna see that this doesn't... It does work, even though we don't have any game on in the background. Sometimes it does that on C4. So for this comparison, we'll leave it on 0, just so that we don't get any inconsistencies. So essentially, white stabilizer will grab the whitest of the whites in the image and try to make them whiter. So if we have something that is close to white but not pure white, white stabilizer, the more you drag it down, the more you lose the limitation of the display's contrast and the more white it will become. It's actually very simple. So now we have gained more white in like the wet parts of this image, I guess. Everything that's close to white here is now whiter and it looks brighter. It's not that much brighter, but it will get way more bright in the end. Now, a set point that is very good if you're gonna go with the accuracy, black level 50 is definitely the way to go. If you dial this up more, 51, 52 and sometimes 53, not on all OLEDs, 53 might occur some native black level rays, so I won't use 53, but 51 and 52 can lift the minor black level a little bit and make you see a little bit better in the dark. However, you are lifting the midtones. So if we're gonna be accurate, it's 50. If you wanna dial in black level rays, you're gonna do fine-tune dark areas and black stabilizer to calibrate that in. And this is pretty important for you guys to understand. You might not even play Black Myth Wukong. So why am I showing you Black Myth Wukong? It's just because most of the games have the same issues with calibration. So if you understand this game's calibration ethic, you will understand it for all other games. So you don't have to think about this as Black Myth Wukong. Just think about it as this game has some issues that basically all games have. And how should I think when I'm dialing the settings in for my games? Okay, so black stabilizer is the midtones. So, you know, this game looks kind of washed out. It's not just because of black level rays. Black level rays is just for the peak blacks. The midtones are for the washout of the entire image. So black stabilizer, the more you drag it down, the more the white will pop out of the display because it's an OLED. So it will be more individualized in the image instead of just sinking into the image. Because it's sinking into the image and it becomes like more washed out and less individualized and it doesn't pop as much from the display as it should because it's an OLED. The thing is, it's because the midtones are way too lifted. So we drag down this until, I would say until we have the black level or like the shadow detail almost so dark that we can't see it, at least in this instance. If we were in another instance where it's like daytime, of course we should see the shadow detail very, very good. So it's a balance. It depends on the game. It's very important to think that way. I would say for most games, 6, 5, 4 and 3 is okay. Below 3 will look really good in some games when it's nighttime a lot, but I wouldn't dial down fine-tune dark areas too much, and in that game I might use HRG because it can remove the nits in the midtones almost completely. So that's my recommendation to you. But the thing is, it might become too dark. And as I'm dragging this down, we have to drag it down a lot, like to 0, to fix the blacklight rays. So in this case, because we can use fine-tune dark areas in the screenshots mode on the PS5, I can show you in the game tab here, all the way down at fine-tune dark areas. And I do believe this game has blacklight rays down to, I think it was 20, 25, I don't remember because I'm not in game right now. But let's say as a rule of thumb, -20 fine-tune dark areas should be fine for this game. So -20 should be fine for most games. No. Fine-tune dark areas on -8 and below is okay. Like above -8, that's only for games that aren't blacklight rays. -8 is good for like most games if you're gonna be using black stabilizer. So if you don't want to be dialing in settings at all, you just want to have the best settings for now, -8 is definitely what I would leave it at, and then dial in black stabilizer on a per game basis. So let's say you're gonna, I know you don't want to hear this, you don't want to be able, you don't want to dial in the settings for each game. I understand that, man. But the thing is, if you want accuracy and a good overall image and you want to get as much from your display as possible for each game, you're gonna have to dial it in on a per game basis. Now I recommend to make a preset for each game. So let's say standard, you calibrate that in for most games. Then user is for more niche games, like darker games. FPS is for shooting games, like all shoot games. RPG is for like Skyrim, Fallout. Those have the kind of same midtone, so that will be fine. RTS, do what you will with that one. And sports, maybe for like FIFA and more colorful games like Fortnite. So yeah, that's my philosophy at least. So how do we calibrate in the black stabilizer for our games, not just for this game? Well, now we have dialed down fine-tune dark areas to -20. So the blacklight rays is not really that much of an issue anymore, but it's still kind of washed out. So we're gonna dial it down from 10 to 4. How do I know 4 is the better option? Because the whites in the image that are bright becomes a little bit brighter and looks a little bit more individualized in the image. That's when I know it's perfect. When the whites pop just that little bit much more than the entire image. And it looks like, not 3D, but it looks like it's popping out of the display next to the other stuff in the display that doesn't pop out of the display. That's when I know it's correct. And as I said before, the shadow detail will be super dark, and you can only see the shadow detail when you close the display, because you will be blinded by the brightness from other elements, usually at least, not in this case, but this is very dark. And if it's too dark for you, it's totally fine. Don't go below 6 black stabilizer if you think it's too dark. It won't be as good for the enthusiast people that are dialing in the settings, but it'll still be way better than on 10, like miles better. So it's totally fine. And if there is somebody out there that thinks it becomes too dark, try to dial in the settings. If it becomes a headache to you and you don't want to handle this at all like this, you hate it, dial black stabilizer down to 7 or 8 and leave it there. That's the simple thing, because you'll be fixing minor boosts in midtones quite a bit with this setting. So if you don't want to touch this at all for any game, just -1, -2, -3, so 7 on black stabilizer, and max out white stabilizer. If you don't want to max out like white stabilizer, you get clipping with the highlights. I will talk about that briefly in a while here. But this is the settings that I use for Black Myth Wukong. So 7 is not the correct one. What was it? 4. 4 on black stabilizer, white on 0. Game contrast, I maxed that out. The same with OLED brightness, of course. Game black level 50. Sharpness is totally up to you. Anything below 25 and you will get like almost no artifacts in sharpness at all. I'm not talking about over sharpening. I'm just believe me. If you want a purity in the image, don't go above 25 and don't use super resolution. But for the more average gamer that sits like 3 meters away from the sofa, 35 or 28 with super resolution high in Game Optimizer, I definitely recommend that. It will give a high upscaling boost to the games, and it will look really good. Now with color, right? Color 50, leave it on color 50, definitely. Don't fiddle with color if you want accuracy. If you want a color boost, you can do 70 or above, it doesn't matter at all. It's just, it won't have as much detail in the color. It might bleed a little bit. And if that's not a problem to you, it's totally fine. But I leave it at 50. Yes, 50. Nothing else has to be said. So we have HDRG. HDRG is not good for basically any games at all, because on these TVs we can do off instead. We can put professional mode on, and we can do HDR mastering at 4000 nits. How this works, it's essentially, if you want to use HDRG without HDRG, you're gonna put in HDMI signaling 1000, 1000, and 1000 mastering 100, or 90 if you think it's clipping too much. It's not really clipping, but you might perceive it as it's clipping because it's so hard to see the details. Then 90 instead of 100. But I do 100 for that extra nits boost. And I don't think 1000 mastering looks better than 4000 mastering. 4000 mastering definitely is brighter in Vivid and in Filmmaker mode than Cinema Home. So 4000 mastering 100 is what I use. In this case, this game doesn't have HDR information, so it will not be bright. So if you don't want to be dialing in HDR and you want HDR pop in all games, then just use dynamic tone mapping. And let me see here. What have I said and what have I not said? So essentially, I know I'm flying around a lot here. I'll try to be fast and brief at the same time, because the thing is, this video cannot be 2 hours. My phone will go out of battery, and the storage will be flying out the window. So dynamic tone mapping is for the average Joe that don't want to adjust anything. They just want brightness all the time. They don't want a dim image. The issue with this is that you might get a lot of ABL in some very bright daytime scenes in games, and in some movies that don't use the black bars on screen. You know about it, 21:9 and all of that. So for those games, use Filmmaker mode, use off, and use 4000 mastering peak on 100, 10,000 on 10, and 1000 on 10. That will be turning them off almost completely, so you'll get most nits boost at 4000 nits. And with those settings in mind, what you will do is you'll go into settings on your TV. You will change this to Filmmaker mode. And with Filmmaker mode, you will do, on the numpad of the controller, you will hover on HDR select mode, and you'll be putting 111, 3, 111. Inside of here, mastering peak 4000, max CLL 4000. This works really good for using dynamic tone mapping as well, if you're seeing clipping, so use that. You will of course also have to dial it in game, but you'll only have to dial it in one time if you're going to be using Filmmaker mode all the time for HDR. Now, how do we calibrate Filmmaker mode for accuracy? And how do we get that accuracy over to Game Optimizer and Vivid? It's time, boys. It's time. So brightness, we do 100, contrast 100, black bevel 50, auto dynamic contrast off, dynamic tone mapping off. We want to make sure that professional is turned on. 1000 mastering 10, 4000 mastering 100, 10,000 mastering on 10. I'm just gonna check that it's still recording. Yes, I've had some issues before. Recorded for 40 minutes and it wasn't even recording. Fuck me, man. Okay, so good. Expression enhancer. I do think detail can be kind of cool, but it does ruin and mess with some stuff in the EOTF, so I won't use it at all. Brightness can boost the highlights. The brightness around the highlights a little bit when using HDRG. I do recommend that to try it out. What do you think? But in this case, I leave it off for accuracy. Video range, very important on PlayStation 5. The RGB range must be limited, and on the TV, it must be limited. This ensures that you get accurate colors, as much contrast pop as possible, as much detail in the dark as possible, and the highest nits possible with the highest vibrancy possible. If you use full, it would look like limited on a monitor. It doesn't look good at all. So limited, definitely. Motion eye care, I leave that off. I don't even know what it does, honestly. From my testing, I haven't seen it do anything. So color depth 50, tint 0. Auto detect on color gamut, fine tune, turn that off. It will ruin the whole color spectrum and try to boost some colors artificially. You can use that if you want to, but I don't recommend it at all. It looks horrible. Okay, so here's the calibration that works for C4 and G4. It might not work for the other models, and I don't think so. So I would only use this for C4 and G4. Warm 50, 2 point on the method, high point -6 on red, 4 on plus, green 4 plus. Fuck, I'm gonna redo it, man. Red -6, on the green you do +4, on blue you do +5. Then on the low point, we will put in +5 on red, 0 on green, and on the blue we do -6. Why am I being so over particular and like trying to over explain? Is because I get a lot of comments and emails from people and they haven't understood a single thing in the video, and I have to sit for 10 minutes to explain to them back and forth with emails. And I love to help you guys. I'm not throwing shade at all at my community. Don't misunderstand me at all. Like, I love you guys to bits, but that's why I'm over explaining. I want you guys to send me messages. Definitely don't feel inclined to not do it. Don't feel scared to do it. I don't think you're stupid in any way. Just spam comments if you want to, man. It's totally fine. I love to answer all of your settings and talk about TVs. I love it, man. I love it so much. So don't feel bad in any way that you ask me. It's like my hobby. I like to sit and answer comments. I love to do that, man. So don't feel bad at all. I love it. But that's why I'm being so over explanatory with the craft of calibrating. Because some people, when I'm too fast in the menus, I've noticed that they don't understand that they can just skip back 10 seconds in the video and rewatch that point and pause, and they don't understand that, and it's totally fine. So I'm trying to be slow but fast at the same time, so storage doesn't run out on the camera, and also that I get the information through as well as possible, because I'm not amazing at English, right? I'm from Sweden. So on filmmaker mode, we do sharpness 0, so we don't get any over sharpening on micro detail. The thing with the sharpness slider on LG, at least C4 and GE4, as soon as you dial this up from 0, when you look really close to the screen, in this case I can't see it that much honestly, but when we're looking at text on the PS5 UI, if you look really close to the alphabet K and O and S, you can see how it adds some weird glitches on the text. So for purity's sake, I leave this on 0. But that's filmmaker mode. Super resolution off. That's the correct settings for filmmaker mode. Now you've calibrated filmmaker mode to be accurate. How do we get vivid to be accurate? In vivid, we are going to use the exact same philosophy. 4000 in the HDMI signaling. We're basically going to do the exact same settings, but we're going to do dynamic tone mapping on instead of off. And in color, this is very important to get accuracy. On vivid, you get way more of a blue magenta tone to the overall image. To fix this, we do on tint R5, so red plus 5. How do you get this value? Well, from the middle point of the default 0, you just do down, 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 down on the arrow keys on the controller until you have R5 there. This should make the display more green instead of magenta, thus balancing out the display. I've checked back and forth from the filmmaker mode after calibration. The calibration is very important to say. It's ratings.com's calibration for the C4 and G4. So that's important to spell out so that you don't think that this is my own calibration that I'm coming up with. I'm not Quantum TV, guys. I'm not trying to show, like, throw shade, but you get it. If you know the story, you know it. Color gamut, auto detect. The thing is, if you do native, which might look nice with most colors, but you're not getting accuracy, and especially in Vivid, you're ruining colors a lot in the color gamut. So don't use native. Use auto detect. Auto detect doesn't actually auto detect. It's like a middle ground between native and Adobe RGB, and it will be very accurate. And our things, ratings.com says the same thing. It's the most like accurate out of the box that you can use for skin tones, flame, and colors and overall. So use auto detect definitely for color accuracy. Make sure that fine-tune colors are turned off in Vivid. White balance, we're gonna do the exact same here as we did in Filmmaker mode. Warm 50, low 5, 0, -6, and on the high point we do -6, 4, and 5. So in clarity, I for some reason put 50 there. It's because I like how that looks, I guess, when I'm using Vivid in some games. Again, we're not caring that much for purity from the sharpness aspects when we're outside of the Filmmaker mode. So you can use super resolution and any sharpness you want here. It's totally fine. It's just up to you. And for movies, this is important to say, I always use True Motion on the maxed out setting. I like the soap opera effect. I don't even call it soap opera effect, but you guys that are enthusiasts understand exactly what I mean when I say that. So yeah, I max it out. I like the higher frame rate look of movies, even though it's artificially boosted. That's me. You can hate me in the comments for it, but I cannot stand the 24p in motion. It doesn't look good at all for me. Aspect ratio on all the video modes, always do original and just scan on. If you cannot dial it in, it's because you're on your PS5 or Xbox or Nintendo Switch. That will lock this setting. So just go to the home screen, turn on, go into here to the video presets, go back one step. Why is it not letting me? I don't know why it's not letting me, guys. You get the idea. You can be in on the YouTube app or anything, and you can dial that in. If you cannot change this, the most important thing about why I'm telling you guys to dial that in is because you get micro blurring of the entire image if this is on off. On and auto is the exact same thing. So if it's on auto and it's like grayed out, it's totally fine. But if it's on off, the entire display is zooming in by like this much on all sides and fronts, and it will blur the entire image very slightly. So that 4K sharpness is a little, like, it's lost in the process. So don't use that. I don't recommend it. On OLED Care, this is very important. Screen move on C4 has a bug. I don't know if this bug is on the G4 as well, but there is a white line that appears when using black stabilizer. When dialing down black stabilizer all the way to 0, and the image behind the black stabilizer filter is intended to be bright, but then you dialed it down with the filter overlay of black stabilizer, LG has mistakenly forgotten to inject that pixel line on the left side hand of the display, so it will be not using the filter. So it's like having the value on 10 on that line, and then you dial it down and it only dials it down for the entire display except for that line, and it will become whiter instead. So yeah, I don't use screen move for that, and it also zooms in the display and ruins the picture quality a little bit, and then it also moves the display. You cannot see it move in motion because it moves very slowly, like super slow. It might take 2 minutes, and after that time it will have moved a little bit, but you cannot see it in motion. Like, I think it takes 20 seconds for it to go and move 1 pixel. It's that slow, like it fades smooths and it doesn't do anything to the image at all. If you don't see that glitched out line and you don't care that much that you lose like 16 pixels in lines on the left side of the display, because it blacks them out, it's totally fine. Use it. It will protect your display. But from my understanding, adjust logo brightness will dim down your HUD, and most of the time when playing a game and you look up at the stars, the nits of the stars will be lowered a lot when this is on. So I leave those two turned off for those reasons. I want the most nits pop that I can get. There is a warning though for me here. When using Vivid, maxing out the brightness settings and don't having these things on and watching TV, you might get temporary image retention a lot. So if you're watching TV, not movies on Netflix or Disney Plus, that's not what I'm talking about here. I will make another video about that stuff in the future. This video is for gaming. If you're gaming in Vivid, inside of the game optimizer mode, I will show you guys how to do that just after this. You might get a lot of image retention because the display gets really warm. Like, you can feel the heat of the display, like this far away from the display essentially. So it gets really hot. I would not turn these two off. I would have them on the maxed value. High is the most protection. Low looks exactly the same as high, to be honest. In some cases you can see that it's a little brighter in low, but use it on high to protect your display if that's what you care about, or else leave it on off. 3 times a week I turn it on high and I leave it on for like a week, and then I'm playing a very dark game with a lot of stars in the sky, and I go in and I turn it off. So I don't like the retrofitment of this, how it dims down stars in the sky in dark movies. I don't think that's cool at all. So I turn these two off. But again, if you don't see the bug and you don't really care about the issues caused by using those, totally fine. Also, AI service. When having turned off ALLM and VRR on your TV and 120Hz support inside of the PS5, you can use AI Picture Pro, and this will upscale the image, but it will also ruin all calibration because it auto-calibrates all colors as it's seeing them. And it's not good at auto-calibrating at all. It's super bad, and it will ruin midtones and make shadows darker. It will dim down some black levels in some cases. I don't use this at all. I don't think it's good. So now you've learned how to calibrate Vivid to look exactly like filmmaker mode. In the game optimizer, I'm just gonna make sure that we go into this as well. On game optimizer, tint is R3 instead of R5. So red 3. Very important if you want to calibrate game optimizer to look like filmmaker mode exactly. Because there is a little difference between game optimizer and filmmaker mode. Filmmaker mode is slightly greener and gray is slightly grayer and whiter. And in game optimizer, white is a little bit more blue, pink, magenta-ish, like it more blue, I'd say, like cyan blue, yeah. And the entire display is a little bit more colder towards magenta, but not like we're talking about super slight. Putting it to red 3 counteracts red a little bit and makes it more green. You might think it makes the display more green, but at least on the C4 and the G4, it makes it more green to dial it into red instead of making it red like on other displays. If you dial it in on the other displays, on the tint, I'm talking about Samsung, Sony, most of the time, at least for older displays that I've tested, it will become more red the more red you push. And the more green you push, the more green the display becomes. But on LG, on this, for some reason, I don't get it. It doesn't matter either way. So on Game Optimizer, we use super resolution on high. I was going to teach you something, and I've actually forgotten about it. It's the ADHD. It's doing its thing. I'm not sure what it was either. Yes, now I remember. Most of you guys won't be able to do this on your TV. So I'm going to learn you how to use Vivid filmmaker mode inside of Game Optimizer, so that you don't lose 120 Hz functionality, you don't lose 40 FPS mode, you don't lose VRR, you don't lose ALLM, you don't lose latency low boost mode and all of that. So how do we do this? Because most of you won't understand, and it's totally fine. You're gonna be on the home tab and you're gonna click on the settings button just quickly, and you can hover on any picture mode at all, it doesn't matter. You can see I have Game Optimizer here on my home screen. You won't have that by default. So you're gonna click on the pen and go all the way down, and you will see a plus icon. Press on the plus icon and add Game Optimizer. After you've done this, you can now use any of these picture presets and have Game Optimizer on at the same time. However, here's the thing. Here's the kicker, right? I'm gonna go into the PS5. And, oh yeah, we can do this. This is the trick that I like to do. I'm just gonna turn on dynamic tone mapping so that you guys are not seeing a super dim display, because that's not fun to look at. Let's see here. There we go. So we're gonna go into settings, video and screen. You can see resolution, VRR, everything is on and automatic, always on. Now you can do this. If you want to use motion interpolation or upscaling, that's forced from the TV, you're gonna gain latency. If you want to do this, put prevent input delay on boost, then turn off VRR and ALLM. It will gray this out, but it will still be on boost, so you'll still get the boost benefit. Then you can use 144 Hz button on, and it will lower the latency of motion interpolation even more. You know, true motion when you use, yeah, the soap opera effect. You can use that for gaming. And this button will lower the latency. It doesn't lower the latency for normal gaming. So there we go, I'm gonna put them back. What have I forgotten about? Yes, okay. The most important thing. We're now in on the PS5, and I wanna use Game Optimizer, right? I'm gonna have to do it this way. It's gonna be super hard if we're not doing it this way, I think. Let's see. Okay, so be in on Game Optimizer. Like the game hub. Then go into Game Optimizer. Go, where is it? Oh, here it is. So on game, you have Game Dashboard. Turn off Game Dashboard. Okay, Game Dashboard is turned off. We are in Game Optimizer. Now we can access the button that we have added. So what we're gonna do then is we're gonna go over to the mode that we want to use. In this case, I want to use Filmmaker mode. I like how that looks, that's me. Then we can go into Game Optimizer now while still in Filmmaker mode. And for you, this button will not be turned on. Turn on this button, and now, after you've done this, it will work on all the other picture modes. So we're turning it on. It reset my input delay, which is not nice. And after we've turned that on, as I said, you can have Game Dashboard on again, and you've now unlocked this mode for everything outside of Game Optimizer. So you can use all of the benefits of Game Optimizer except for black and white stabilizer. The dynamic tone mapping button and the VRR, 144 Hz, ALLM, fine-tune dark areas, all of those still work. So this is the best way to play on the PS5. Or like any console, actually. Sorry for saying PS5. This is the best gaming settings for LGC4 and G4. Hands down. And now you know how to calibrate in the image. Now you know like most of the stuff about this display. I'm going to give you a last little treat. If you want 40 FPS mode to feel a little bit better on this TV, you will go into System, HDMI, and turn off HDCP. This will lower the latency from 3 to 5 milliseconds lower than before. So if you're playing 120 FPS with VRR or without VRR, it doesn't matter. If you're in the 120 Hz container at all, this turned off will make the controls feel way more responsive, and 40 FPS mode will feel more fluid, definitely. So turn this off, but when you turn this off, you lose Spotify and YouTube and Netflix and Disney Plus functionality. So if you want to use that again, just turn it on. So now, I turn it on. We can now use YouTube and Spotify. I turn it off. Oh, that's why we could use fine-tuned dark areas, because the game was on in the background. Now, when we have turned off HDCP, we have less delay on 120 Hz games and 40 FPS games. So that's a good little trick there. I'm pretty sure we are done. We have made sure that everything is working as intended. If there is, for some reason, you cannot use VRR 120 Hz in the 4K output, there might be an issue with your display, and we're gonna fix that for now, okay? So general, and you wanna go down all the way to external devices, HDMI settings, and in here you wanna do HDMI deep color and turn it to 4K. After you've done this, make sure that the game optimizer, game hub menu has VRR and ALLM turned on, and turn it on inside of the PS5 settings as well. As I said, RGB range limited. Thank you guys for watching, and if you have any questions, don't be scared to leave them in the comment section down below. And thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you guys understand now how to set the settings of your display, and I will of course be answering all the comments if you're kind to me. If it's a hate comment, I won't even read it, man. I hate comments. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.